Good evening. I call to order the City of Gerald regular called City Council meeting Tuesday, February 18th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
All right, first item on the agenda is going to be a roll call. We have one member not here. Councilman Adam Marsh. We will have an invocation and pledge of allegiance led by Councilwoman Clausen.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather this evening. We ask that you continue to lead us and guide us in our service to the citizens of Gerald. Please continue to watch over us and keep us safe in the cold weather that's ahead of us. We give you all the thanks and glory. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comments, and we do not have any. Moving on to agenda item number 3, public hearing 3.1. Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Gerald will hold a public hearing to appeal to apportionment of infrastructure costs pursuant to Local Government Code 212.904. Parties will be WBW Development and the City of Gerald City staff. Said hearing will be held here at City Council Chambers at 161 Town Center Boulevard, Gerald, Texas, on the 18th day of February 18th, 2025 at 7 p.m. We have no public comments. We're going to close this public hearing.
Mayor, I'd like to request that we move briefly into executive session so I can talk to council together about the procedure that will be happening.
All right, so we're going to adjourn to executive session to briefly discuss this, and we'll come back out shortly. City Council is now adjourned at 7:02 p.m. Gerald City Council is now back in session at 7:09 p.m. All right, agenda item 3.2, discussion consideration of possible action to vote on decision from appeal hearing. I'd like to welcome WBW up to the podium.
Well, Art Anderson with Winstead. So the question is, are we gonna follow the rules of procedure that you guys sent us?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want an opening statement, is that at this
Yeah.
point? Okay. I don't wanna make it too formalistic, but there's a procedure the city's implemented. I'm gonna make a real brief opening statement, Your Honor.
We're gonna turn the mic on for you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So. Is that on? Oh, so. Right.
Over on the side.
You're professional.
No, I'm not.
That might be have to do with it, I don't know. Tap on the table, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Art Anderson. I'm with Winstead firm in Dallas, representing WBW. I'm going to try to be as efficient as I can tonight. A, to be respectful of your time, and B, to see if I can get home to Dallas before the roads totally ice over. I'm assuming y'all know what the appeal is about basically. There's a statute that basically says if there's an infrastructure requirement, the city requires it to be oversized. It can be a road, water line, whatever. And basically it says that the part that is I guess, attributable to the development, that the developer should be responsible for that cost. Above that, which is basically the public, that the developer should be reimbursed if he's paid for that. That's kind of the simplistic way to look at it. So this one, I'll be honest with you, I've probably filed 30 appeals. This is my first time to ever be before a city council. The rest of them we all settled out. But the simple facts are, their sanitary sewer line came in 2021 for the Eastern Wells development. The city said, we'd like for you to oversize that line significantly to serve 5 or 6 other developments. At the time, they said it basically be 10,000 houses or LUEs. They subsequently revised that to 8,000. The number of LUEs or living unit equivalents is about the same as a house, mostly. It would be, for us, would be 748, right? So ours require like an 8-inch to 15-inch, 8-inch on-site, 15-inch off-site. City wanted that to be 24-inch and 30, so that it could serve all these other developments. We agreed to do that. Obviously, that benefits the city because city doesn't have to bear the cost, we're upfronting it. And it opens up development, so it helps those developers as well. But obviously, there's a delta there, right? I mean, I think that may be the only undisputed part of this whole case. So there's 2 ways to look at it. One is, it's a proportionality appeal, right? So one way you can look at it is, what's the capacity of the big line and how much capacity do we use? And I think the city's engineer and ours are pretty close on that. It's 9 to 10%. So if you use that, which would be a true proportionality, then our guys would be responsible for 9 to 10%. The city would be responsible for about 90%. The other way, the way this case is kind of proceeded with regards to the facts, is looking at the delta. What's the difference in the cost to build the line that was sized just for our development versus the line that was sized that the city wanted to serve several other developments? Back in, well, I guess, sorry, Mayor, I think we both had exhibits that the city provided and I provided in accordance with the rules. I think we'd like to both introduce those at this time.
All right.
I don't have extra copies for everybody, but just to do that.
Yeah.
And I can give it to you. So most of the discussion that's gone on is, well, how do you determine what the cost of the lines are, right? So one is a line that was never built, which is the smaller one. The other one is the cost of the line that was built, and what's the delta between those two? And that's where we had a disagreement. So in 2024, the city engineer came out with a recommendation of how much the smaller line was, the bigger line was, and basically it was just about the same as ours. A few $1,000s different there. That changed. The city kept the number for the small line, but the city engineer decreased the number of the cost for the big line. So that delta shrinks, right? That differential cost. And that's basically, what the issue is here today. So the only other thing I'd like to say is the burden of proof in the city's rules is not consistent with what the case law is, which is once we prove it's an exaction, which it is, the city has the burden of proof as to what that reimbursement should be. We don't need to hassle about the legal stuff, but I just wanted to get that out there. And I guess I was trying to figure out mechanically the best way to handle this. If I'm gonna ask questions of our witness, should they stand up here, Mayor? Should they sit next to me? Let's
That's probably the best way to do it, yeah.
sit over here.
Yeah.
Okay. Bruce? Doug, sorry.
Well, before we begin, Mayor, I think the city gets an opportunity
Oh,
to make
yeah.
an opening
No, you
statement.
don't
too.
have to say anything. My bad.
Okay, so.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Bradford Bullock. I'm here for the city of Gerald. I've been before you all before a few times in the past. And I think Art did a good job of summarizing what we're here about. The dispute is not whether or not the city is responsible for reimbursement. The question is just how much. And obviously, the city's engineer has a different number and different methodology. It's going to be your determination to make that decision. What we are responsible for as the city is for reimbursing the developer for municipal infrastructure costs that exceed the amount required for infrastructure improvements and that are roughly proportionate to the proposed development as approved by a professional engineer retained by the municipality. So I think it's our position that the cost of the 8 and the 15, that delta between that cost and the cost between the 24 and 30-inch pipes, we have a different number, and it's a substantially different number than theirs. And so it's going to be your determination to understand and decide what that delta should be. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm gonna bring the books down here then, if the
Okay.
witness aren't gonna. Mayor, may make it easier, at least you got that. Is it okay if I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Yes. Please state your name
Douglas Rinke.
and what is your occupation?
I'm COO of WBW Development.
And what is WBW Development?
It's a residential developer.
And how many subdivisions have y'all developed?
We've done approximately about 180 different phases of subdivisions over 40 years. So about over 25,000 lots.
And each specializes in a certain area of Texas?
Pretty much central Texas, so we go through from Waco down to San Antonio to Bryan College Station.
Can you describe what Eastern Wells is?
It's a subdivision here right off of the I-35 on Frontage Road in Gerald.
How many acres, lots, that sort of thing?
It's 159 acres and 748 lots.
And is the city the sanitary sewer provider?
Yes.
If you could look at our exhibit 7.1, and this is gonna be hard for y'all, because y'all don't have copies. I don't know why, but I thought that they would be there. So just so I can describe to the council what we're looking at.
7?
Our set.
Would you like my copy?
Sure. So, so just for
I'm sorry, you said 7 what?
exhibit 7.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the council members around here, this is a July 16, 2021 letter. It was kind of in the midst of the design of the sanitary sewer. And so is this the letter where the city asked the developer to upsize the sanitary sewer line?
Yes, it is.
And how many developments did the city say that they wanted to have served by the line?
It's like 5 plus our own, so 6 total.
And at that point in time, what was the additional LUEs that the city was requesting?
10,150.
And that number's gone down, right?
It has.
Okay. And how much is it now?
I believe it's 8,050.
8,009?
Okay, 8,000.
So there's gonna be a lot of math, right? Because proportionality is going back to algebra. I'm not very good at math, but going back to algebra is what are the proportions, right? So we're gonna have a lot of
Yours.
numbers to talk about here. So we're in 2021. What did the city tell you about whether or not y'all would be reimbursed for the assignment?
They said we would.
Was there doubt about that?
No.
And if you go to exhibit 1, so we have two things, right? We got the city's exhibit and our exhibit. I'll try to say what book it is, but for our exhibit 1, could you just basically identify what that is?
Looks like it's an email from the city manager. Here is a development agreement for the line swap for Eastern Wells 2. Let us know if you have any changes.
So what's the date of that email?
June 29th, 2021.
And back of it, is there a utility agreement between the city of Gerald and WBW, a single development group, a draft agreement?
There's a draft agreement, yes.
Okay. And so that was that being discussed between the parties?
Yes.
And, so at the top it says David Peter responds to the city manager. Does Mr. Peter work for you?
He did at that time, yes.
Now, before the line got built, was that agreement ever finalized?
No, but not without countless trying.
Okay. So, I mean, kind of what happened?
There was a lot of change in the city, obviously, and obviously we had people there constantly coming up to the city. I had them literally going to the city and sitting there and waiting for people to come in so they could talk. We did emails, we did phone calls. I did phone calls, I did meetings. We tried a lot to get that done.
And so was an agreement actually done, signed and everything before y'all started work?
No,
Did y'all have timing constraints that you had to start work?
absolutely.
And even though you didn't have an agreement, was there any doubt that the city was going to pay y'all for the delta or whatever the proportionality amount was?
No, we had an email that of course they're gonna reimburse and they initiated the development agreement.
If you look at exhibit 2, it's right after the draft agreement. Who is Travis Parks?
He's our general counsel for WBW.
Is that the guy over here raising his hand?
It's right here.
It's a long letter, but it basically to the council, it says we want to get reimbursed, but the city is saying they're not going to reimburse. Is that fair?
Yes,
And this was after the line was built.
correct.
And it wasn't a situation of how much you get reimbursed. It was, from the city standpoint, we're just not going to reimburse you. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And what was your reaction to that?
And obviously you were surprised and shocked and had many conversations to try and change that.
So, and so there were discussions, right? Of y'all trying to talk to the city and say, hey, can we get this deal resolved? Is that fair?
Always, yeah, by
Okay.
many people.
So if you look at exhibit 3, and I guess at the end of the day, did the city indicate that they would reimburse you or not?
No.
And because of that, you basically have to retain our law firm at that point?
Correct.
And this exhibit 3, the February 14, 2024 letter that I sent to Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, it is.
And basically that request, the reimbursement, right?
Mhm.
And there's an exhibit to that, right? It's an opinion of construction costs.
Correct.
And what is WBW Construction?
It is a civil construction company, a separate LLC.
And who is Brandon McKee who signed it?
He was the vice president of WBW Construction, ran all daily operations.
And that, it has PE after his name. What does that mean?
He's also a professional engineer, so.
And can you explain what the two charts are?
The first one looks like it was from August of 2022, shows opinion of construction costs for 8-inch, 15-inch line, so it would just serve just our subdivision. And then the second one shows the total completed construction costs of $2.961,000 and subtracts out what it would have been for us, leaving a balance to WBW development for $2,009,000.
This is a question for the council. When I talked about delta, does everybody understand what that is? We sometimes use these code words, you know. So basically, that was an effort by a professional engineer to say, again, we don't have the actual cost of the small line because that was never built, right?
Correct.
But the bigger line, that the actual cost then was the $2,961,477, which left the delta $2,993,3.94.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
So, do you know who Justin Stark is?
City,
If you could look at Exhibit 4 of theirs, sorry, you got to go up there, but make it more confusing. So, just for the council, this is the city's exhibits that we're looking at here. And this is an April 19, 2024 email from Mr. Scarth to Ms. Singh and others, correct?
yes. Yes, it is.
Okay, and what are the two methodologies that you're aware of to calculate proportionality?
Proportionate share, so basically what we would use compared to what the full capacity would be. And then the delta, the difference between what it would be to serve ours versus upsizing for the largest.
And kind of just how I described it in the opening, right?
Correct.
So Mr. Scarth, he says that he's analyzed the cost comparison data that WBW provided, and he breaks it down into those two methodologies. Is that fair?
He does.
On the proportional calculations, what does he say that the city would be responsible for based on that percentage of capacity number?
If cost sharing, basically the city would be responsible for approximately 90% of the construction costs.
And to be fair, he says this is not a recommended calculation to use for the cost sharing, correct?
Correct.
And so he moves to this material delta difference cost.
Yes.
Right. And without having to go into a lot of detail, what does he say that the cost would be or were compared to what y'all said that they would be or were?
He's got two. He's got one for the 8-inch, the original. So his was 931,000. Ours was 951,000. So pretty close. And for the larger, his was 2.933, and ours was 2.961.
So those
Pretty
numbers,
much
right?
consistent.
Those numbers are very close, right? And
Very close.
And what does he say the difference between the calculations was?
Net difference cost, his is, the city would, well, I'm not sure he's saying the city, it just says net different cost would owe 2,002,000, and ours is 2,010,000.
So again, I mean, that's, when you're talking about millions of dollars, that's relatively a small number. Is that fair?
He's got a difference of $7,314.
And does he say that the estimates that y'all provided, quote, appear to be generally reasonable?
I have to read it to find that part. The estimates that were provided appear to be generally reasonable and are not believed to be grossly underestimated.
So, is it fair to say that if we were in April 2024, we used the city engineer, used your guys, we wouldn't be out here today? Is a fair statement?
Yes.
So on the proportionality, let's go back for a quick second. If you use our numbers on the cost of the big line,
Mhm.
okay? And what is the percentage of capacity? So it's 80-90, so it's 748 over 80-90 becomes a percentage, right?
Correct, yes.
What is your calculation as to what that number is?
Ours is 9.2%, the city's would be 90.8%.
And so if you took the cost of the big line and the city, well, I guess the city then becomes 90.8%, right?
Yes,
So based on the pure proportionality capacity, what would be the city's share?
$2.7 million.
So the proportionality methodology would result in a larger number for you than the delta cost.
Correct.
For us sitting here today, are you willing to do the delta cost? I'm not talking about an appeal, just here to get this deal done today.
Yes, that's what we agreed to.
All right, if you could look at our exhibit list, exhibit 5. So, for the council, this is a May 28, 2024 letter to Mr. Rodriguez from myself. It just is kind of background. Mr. Scarth had sent a letter dated April 3rd, 2024, asking for backup and documentation on the cost. And this letter we sent back was in response to that.
Correct.
So if you could look at, let's kind of go back. If you look at, this is, I hate to go back in time, but I do that sometimes. If you look at exhibit B of our exhibit 5, when you were putting together the agreement, did y'all provide an opinion of cost to the city?
Yes,
And is that reflected in the August 23rd, 2022 letter to Mr. Larry Bush in exhibit B?
yes, it does.
Okay, and, why was that letter sent, do you recall?
I think we were requested to get an opinion of construction costs.
As part of the development agreement negotiations, okay. And so are the numbers essentially the same in B as they were in the last exhibit we looked at, which has the opinion of construction costs for the small line? And then this one's an opinion of construction costs for the large line, because it hadn't been built yet, right? So you don't have actual numbers.
Both are opinions, yes.
And, but at the end of the day, we're gonna go through a bunch of these charts, but are they all very consistent in what the opinions are as to the cost of the small line versus the large line,
Yeah, it looks like
within thousands?
small line looks the same and large line looks like it's a little more than it actually did cost, but
Okay.
pretty, very, very close.
Gotcha. So the 2022 is signed by whom on that second page?
Juan
Last name?
Brizuela,
And who's he?
he is the engineer of record and a professional engineer.
And does it have its seal, just so y'all can see this?
Yes, it does.
So this right here is the engineering seal, where basically he certifies that in his opinion, those numbers are true and correct. Now, if you look at exhibit C, what is that document?
This looks like it's the same as Juan's on the front. The city requested original or costs, actual costs. So we have the opinion of construction costs, and then we have the actual costs on the next phase.
And this is in response to Mr. Scar's April 3rd, 2024 letter, where he asked for more documentation,
Correct.
basically, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so this time, again, every time we have to go to an opinion of the construction cost of the small line, because it was never built.
Correct.
What about on the second chart,
The second chart is actual, so it looks like that is the total construction cost, so actual costs.
and can you read to the council on page 1, the second paragraph, that Mr. McKee, and this time Mr. McKee did seal his, right?
He did see it.
Okay. Just go ahead and read that paragraph too.
The table on the following page represents the actual cost of upsizing post-construction, prepared and confirmed by WBW Construction LLC as the Vice President of WBW Construction and in my capacity as a professional engineer. I have sealed this document as required by the city.
All right, so we've got multiple signed opinions of cost by 2 different engineers, right?
We did.
If you could look at Exhibit D. Now, this one is different, right? So this involves a different subdivision that y'all developed, is that correct? And can you describe for the council what development is reflected in Exhibit D?
This is for Eagles Landing, which is a development that we're currently just finishing up in Waco, Texas.
And why is this included in the letter?
It shows the estimated cost to oversize a sanitary sewer.
It's another data point, right?
It is.
Okay. And what does it show in terms of like unit cost and that sort of thing compared to what y'all showed in y'all's estimate?
It shows pretty close to the same.
All right. And was there a request on the front page? This is an oversizing deal too, sanitary sewer,
Correct.
similar deal.
Similar. Very
And does that say that the adjustment y'all were requesting was from the city was 534,000? Is that
600.
648.75?
Correct.
And did the city pay that or not?
We're just finishing it currently.
You expect to get paid?
We did.
And that one is sealed as well, right?
Yes, yes. Correct.
So if you could look at, well, let's just go back. So I want to ask a couple questions about the city's exhibits, but with regards to the exhibits in our book, what's the number that you're requesting that the city council awards you
I think
to?
it's 2,009,000 roughly. and change. 2,009,933.94.
So real quick, let's look at the city. So we looked at exhibit 4 and the statements that are in there regarding the percentage of capacity and his costs, which are about the same as our costs at that point in time.
Correct.
Are you in agreement with the city engineer with what he has in that exhibit?
It's $7,000, so yes.
So if you could look at, let's go a little bit. So if you look at his, sorry about that. He had a portion that reappeared as well. Yeah.
Right here. 40.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I have an open right there.
Okay. So what does 4E say about, this is from Mr. Scark, right?
Correct.
And so is that the percentage of capacity methodology? How big's the line?
Proportionality calculation.
And what was his opinion at that point in time as to what the city's proportionality
They would be,
requirement would be?
they would owe 91%. We would owe 9%. City's cost would be 2.647780.3.
And how does that compare to your numbers on the percentage of capacity number?
Percentage of half capacity is right on the money pretty much.
Okay, so if you could look real quick at his exhibit 5, Mr. Starr's And this is the report. This is the last one that we received. And it's from May 20th, 2024. And are you aware if the city ever provided us with, he relies on one line, right, the Donahoe parallel line?
Correct.
And he used the lowest bids received for that line, correct?
Yes.
Doesn't say average, high, anything, this is the lowest.
No.
So I guess the question is, have you been able to look at a contract or change orders or actual construction costs? Was any of that provided to you to look
No.
at?
No,
And you're aware that we asked for that information
I
in
am.
the city?
I am.
What are the types of ways that this bid of a totally different line, unrelated to this line, might be, because we don't know, right? Because we don't have construction drawings, we don't have change orders, we don't have a contract, we don't have anything, right?
Correct.
What could be some reasons that his number would be so off? And don't forget, that's much lower than the cost he said was reasonable, which was our number, but what could be some things that'd be different?
I mean, there's many different reasons. I mean, there's depth of sewer, there's types of soil, there's going through rock, there's the equipment that needs to be used, there's, different ways that people quote. People will quote and include fittings, people will quote and just include the pipe, with no fittings. When you see all these bids that we do see, I mean, we see bids from other companies because we have MUDs that we have to publicly bid. They come in completely different with different things. So that's why we requested the full information.
Okay. Did y'all have to acquire right away for yours?
I would put that to the engineer.
Okay. So you're saying that there could be vast differences between the two, and that's the only thing he bases his new opinion on, is based on a bid for a parallel line that is not basically this line.
It doesn't show services, it doesn't show fittings, it doesn't show all kinds of things.
Okay. Do you have any other testimony you'd like to give?
No, I guess the testimony for me is, I don't know why it changed in 1 month to a different number. It just seems kind of odd to us. And we just want to be fair with the city. We've tried, we put the money up front. We've been sitting a couple years to try and get that, which is pretty expensive to do. And we just hope we do the right thing.
Pass witness.
Thank you.
I have a question. One of your earlier exhibits, it was from your attorney, you indicate that the city stated that they would not reimburse, is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
What is exact wording, who actually wrote that? Or stated that from the city?
Was it in writing or was it orally? That the city said they would
They
not?
definitely said it to me personally.
Who?
The city.
And when so it was not in writing? Is that?
I don't believe I have anything in writing. I'd be happy to go look for it and supplement if y'all need, but it was said multiple times that it was not something where it was a question of, did they really mean it the one time that they said it? It was a very consistent statement.
Did she give you a reason?
Hang on, just for a second, if you're gonna be putting testimony, can we just make
Yeah.
sure that for the
Yeah,
purposes of
well-
the record?
And that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Hello.
Did you say she was not gonna pay it entirely, or wasn't gonna pay it the amount you all requested? And this is just hearsay at this point.
Right, it's not hearsay, I was there. Right. I met with her in person.
Okay.
Okay. So she said she
Big
was.
session is a party opponent.
Did she give a reason?
You should have had development.
All day, every day.
That's what she said. And we tried.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, let me give you, if it's okay with the mayor, our exhibit 2, which isn't an email, but is in response, Travis's response to that. So I know it's not direct, statement, right? Sorry, Brad.
All right. When council's done asking whatever questions they want to ask, I've got a few to follow up, but I'll let y'all
Okay.
go first, okay?
Thank you.
And my apologies, I had a question directed at me.
I know, I understand, I just meant for the
Habit.
record.
Are you guys ready for Brad?
What's up?
No, I didn't know if there were any other
Oh,
council questions
I
or.
think they were reading this document. Any questions?
Okay. All right. Tell me your name again.
Douglas Rinky.
Rinky, Mr. Rinky. At some point in this process, did the city of Gerald request from you, or WBW, copies of invoices or receipts or other documentation of actual costs incurred by WBW for the upsizing?
I have to read through, which are you?
I'm asking you if you were ever asked
I
by the city.
wasn't asked.
Do you know if anyone from WBW was asked?
There's so many moving pieces in this, and it took so long, I do not know.
So let me ask you this, has WBW produced to the city of Gerald invoices or receipts or other documentation of actual cost incurred by WBW for these upsized pipes and fittings and everything else that went into this project?
No, I do not believe we have.
Okay.
I mean,
Do you have documentation to that effect? Because it wasn't in the exhibit list.
we buy things, obviously, so we have those different things, but, that's not normal business that, a company would just give every invoice of what they do, but it's not a typical business.
I think the question was whether or not WBW was asked for that information and you don't recall, or you don't know. And, all right, and so as part of the information presented tonight, you did not provide invoices or receipts or other documentation related to actual costs incurred for this upsizing, is that right?
Well, I mean, there's actual cost in here, there is a cost.
Invoices or receipts is what I'm asking about.
No,
Okay.
It's an invoice.
It
It is an invoice.
What you're telling me is the invoice is the sealed engineer estimate of probable cost?
No, it's an invoice from WBW Construction to WBW Development.
Which exhibit number is that?
What's that?
Which exhibit number is that?
I believe you did provide that invoice. Let me see here. But I do believe there is an invoice from WBW Construction to WBW Development.
Okay, well, but it's not in the documentation that was provided tonight to the city 7 days ago, is that what you're telling me?
I don't see it here right now.
Okay. Do you know what that invoice said? What number?
It would have been the $2,009,933.94.
And is it itemized in any way?
Yes. It's got 24-inch pipe with depths and how many quantities, how many linear feet.
Where are you
Cost-
moving from right now?
It's 5C.
Yeah, it's got the pipe, it's got the different depths that it was, a different size pipe, it's got the manholes, it's got the drop manhole, it's got the doghouse manholes, it's got the double-sided services, it's got the single services, the short side double service, it's got the concrete encasing, it's got the boring that we had to do under the road. It's pretty detailed, trench safety.
And so what you're reading from right now are the tables that are on Exhibit 5C, pages 1 and 2? Is that what you're reading from?
It's page 2, because that's the actual cost.
Yeah, page 2.
And what I'm looking at is the one that's sealed by Randall McKee. Is that right? And so what you're telling council is that an affiliated entity, the WBW, provided from one to the other an invoice that reflects these numbers.
There is an invoice, correct.
And what is the relationship between these two entities? I'm not.
The relationship is the same ownership, the same owner, but it's run by different people.
And the affiliated entity that's the construction entity, you know that has invoices for when it acquired the material that was subject, part of this construction project?
We buy things, you usually get an invoice, yes, I would assume that.
But those weren't provided to the city, were they?
Nor do we normally do that in construction to,
I understand, but they were not, that was not provided to the city as part of this appeal or earlier in the process, is that right?
correct,
Okay.
not that I'm aware.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Can I ask one quick redirect? So the relationship between the construction company and the developer, are there other development companies that have a similar, I guess, have the development company and then have an affiliated construction company that
Yes.
does the development?
Yes.
That's not unusual, is that
No.
fair? Okay. That's all. But
Okay. Okay. And then do we have somebody from,
we've got two more witnesses.
okay.
Come on. Don't trip that, it'll kill you. Yeah, be careful of that water.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening, everybody.
You ready? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you please state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Juan Brizuela, and I'm the engineer that designed Eastern Wells.
And how long have you been an engineer?
I've been doing engineering since 1997, so about 28 years. So.
And are you licensed with the state?
Yes, I am.
And what does it mean to be a PE or a professional engineer?
It means professional engineering. You know, we need to have a 4 years of experience and take the test and work under the supervision of another professional engineer. We prepare, our log of projects that we have done, we send it to the board, and then they go through it, and then they say, with all the experience that we have in passing the test, that we are able to be a professional engineer.
And Mayor, we've got his resume as Exhibit A, just so I don't have to go through a lot of it. Do you work on residential subdivisions?
Yes.
About how many?
Oh, I done, in the last 28 years, over 100 or so. Yeah.
And do some of those projects have utility oversizing issues? Not
Yes.
issues, but utility oversizing.
Components, yes.
And do some of those projects include cost reimbursements to address the oversizing?
That's correct.
So I'm gonna just real quick, so of the city's exhibits, there's 4C and 4D. These are actually the construction plans that were approved by the city, correct?
That's correct.
And so when we're talking about, specifically the type of line and where it's located, you can find those in the city's 4C, 4C and 4D, is that correct?
Yes,
And so, were those construction plans that were there, were they redesigned because the city wanted to make the line bigger,
yes.
greater capacity? And so, without having to go back through much, but just because you're here, if you look at my exhibit real quick. So, this is Exhibit 5, and Exhibit B. So I'm gonna go through the chronology again real quick. So this is the letter to Mr. Bush, August 23rd, 2022. And that one is signed and sealed on the second page, correct?
Yes.
And that one, I think, Doug already talked about it, but it has two tables, before and after. Those are numbers that you prepared, correct?
That is correct. This is a table for the opinion of probable cause.
And generally, how did you prepare that?
First of all, what we do is, once we get the plans, we do a material takeout. We know how many of 8-inch sewer line will be, how many in this case 15. That was just for own development, so I did a quantity of those. And then I did another quantity takeoff for the oversight that it was requested by the city, which is in this case the 24 and the 28. So once I did the quantity takeoff, then I consulted, the construction, WBW Construction, in order to provide a cost estimate, so I can prepare like an opinion, because at that time, they were the experts on doing the construction of, these kind of developments.
And so this was provided to the city in 2022?
That is correct.
And did anybody at the city, whether it's the city manager, the city engineer, anybody else indicate that they disagreed or disputed those costs?
No, they did not.
And so what does it mean to put your seal on it?
All the context of this document has been prepared and under my supervision to the best data available at that time.
It's basically the seal of approval.
Let's see, to the best of my knowledge, the best, data that I have at the time.
So, and if you could look at the Exhibit C, which is the May 3rd, 2024 letter that was in response to Mr. Starr. That was prepared by Mr. McKee and has his seal, correct?
Correct.
And does he work with you?
But I know him, I know that's,
Okay, he's with the construction
Yeah, with that
company,
construction, correct.
but he's still a professional engineer.
Right, it's a professional, correct.
And so, he basically has the actual cost on the second table, right?
That is correct.
And again, in all these tables, both the estimates and the actuals, are all of the numbers very close.
They're very similar to the opinion of probable cost that I did in 2022.
And if you look at Exhibit 3, which was my letter to the city, that's the August 18, 2023 chart from Mr. McKee. Those numbers are very similar to all of the other charts, is that correct?
Exhibit 3. Say Exhibit C?
Yeah, that's it. It's the August 18, 2023. Go to the page before. Is that the August 18? Oh, no, go back to Exhibit 3, sorry, not C.
Okay.
We get to go back to 3.
Okay, good.
And so that's, what's the date of the charts in that one?
This one is August 18, 2023.
Okay. And again, those numbers are just about the same, right?
Right.
And so looking at, going to the city's exhibit real quick,
Okay.
if you look at Exhibit 4, you look on page 1,
Okay.
does Mr. Scarth agree with y'all's opinions of cost for both the small sewer pipe and the large sewer pipe?
Yes, based on his calculation, he mentions that, yes.
And if you could go back to, if you could kind of move back a little bit to Exhibit 4E. It's got different charts in there. Page 4 at the bottom, it'll be 4E at the top, page 4 or 5 at the bottom.
It's almost all the way to the back.
So he actually has estimated construction costs that he prepared, correct? Here, I'll just.
Oh, 4D, okay, I got it.
Hold on, I got it. Here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so basically, those are the costs that he prepared.
That is correct.
And per the plans dated 5/12/21, is that when the construction plans were basically done for the sanitary sewer pipe?
That's correct.
And his numbers are basically the same as yours and Mr. McKee's, right?
Agreed, yes.
Okay, and that was in April of 2024 when his numbers agreed with your numbers,
Mm-hmm.
is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'd circulate that too. So we don't know what we're talking about. We passed those. We go ahead and pass.
We're waiting for them, seeing if they're gonna ask questions.
Okay, ask me a question.
I have a question. Attorney asked you if you had, if they said any opposition to your estimate. Did you get any response from the city saying that they agreed to that? Because you said you got no opposition, but did you get any like correlation to like, oh, that's a good number, we accept it? Or was there no
No, I
communication?
did not.
So there's no communication
No,
whether good or bad?
except for that, this letter right here. That I seen this.
When was this line actually, constructed? What was the date of completion?
It was in,
2023, right?
no, 2022.
Look at, no,
We got the hospital plans going in 2022, in November 2022.
Okay, that's when it was completed?
It was actually in November of 2022.
So prior to it being completed, there was never any discussions about cost or cost estimates? I think
Well, part of, in order to start the development agreement, I was asked to provide our opinion of probable cost to do that. agreement. And that was my task. So I was the designer, the design engineer, and also to help put together the opinion of probable cost.
Okay.
And that's what I did.
Yeah, and Mayor, I'm looking through the draft development agreement that's part of Exhibit 1 of ours on page 4 of the 8. You may be able to see it. It says, this is third line from the balance, from the bottom, being the balance of engineer's opinion of probable construction cost attached as Exhibit B, $20,023,46. Is that the one you're talking about?
yes.
Now, to be fair, if you look at the, you know what they call those little things that are on the side, it says Justin needs to check these numbers.
So they were provided.
And I'm not saying the city agreed or disagreed, but I'm saying they were aware, because that's why they put that number on there.
So I have a question. I don't know if you know or you don't know, who's, who makes the movement to go ahead and proceed, to go ahead and start doing the work? Is that your call?
Actually building the line?
Yes, actually
Yeah.
moving forward because you got a okay from the city to go ahead and proceed. Who makes that call to do it? Is it the engineer or?
Yeah, I think that it's typically when the city engineer typically signs off on the construction plans and says, you're authorized to go ahead and go forward. And that, I mean, we initiate it, right?
Yes.
Because we're gonna pay for it, but we don't start until the city approves the plans and gives us the authority to go forward. Does that make sense?
Yes, and does that normally happen before or after y'all negotiate on the price? Because it seems like that's what we were fighting over. Do y'all normally move forward, not having a set price?
Yeah, I think it depends. So legally, there's an obligation by the city to pay the oversight. It would be smoother if we had a development agreement, which I think the testimony is, we tried really, really hard to make that happen. And for whatever reason, the city was not able to get that done. So at some point, you gotta start the development, right? You can't just hold it forever, but we were told, again, no good deed goes unpunished, right? We were told that the city agreed that they would reimburse. It would be better, I agree with you, if you had a contract that spelled it out, but it doesn't change the legal obligation to reimburse.
I have one question. When you submitted the construction plans for the city engineer to review and approve, was that offsite included in that original set of plans, or it was a 8-inch and then requested to offsite?
It was included on the first, because it was the first phase. You know, in the first phase, we have the offsite as well, the on-site and the off-site. So when we submitted the first time, and we received the first round of comments, that's when the city said, no, can you extend, you know, even further north towards I-35, from there put a 24-inch, and take it all the way down to the existing line, and then at the end of the offside of the, from or development to the existing line, it was a 30-inch.
It came early in the process.
That's correct.
That was
the
approved
first
before
one.
we started
Yeah.
construction.
Yeah.
So they showed the small line, the city said, can you do us a solid and do the big line, and at that point, everything, the construction plans changed everything else.
Mhm.
Any further questions? I have one question. Has the developer, y'all started building houses and selling them, I assume?
Yes.
Yep. And have y'all been paying the wastewater, access fees to the city? Okay.
The builder has been.
Okay. That's all I have. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. No more questions? No more witnesses?
None from us, unless y'all have one, anybody, but I wouldn't plan on anybody else.
So at this time, Mayor, I'm gonna request that we go back into executive session again.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna object to that.
I-
I'm not,
our-
it's quasi judicial. I mean, if you're
I need
If
to
you're gonna go back there and make a decision, that doesn't seem quite, fair or consistent with.
Well, I need to give my client legal advice. I mean, and so the only way I can do that is in executive session. I'm entitled to give my client legal advice, but I think it's in everyone's best interest for us to go into executive session. So maybe give my client some legal advice, so
Okay.
we can come back out.
If it's in everybody's best interest, sure.
Charles City Council is now adjourned. Go into executive session at 8:16 PM. Gerald City Council is now back in session at 8:39 PM.
Mayor, may I first, for the city's presentation?
Just scan.
Mayor and council says, this proceeding is governed by, chapter 9 of the Code of Ordinances, and pursuant to 9.06.007, the city's presentation, the city presentation may be made on a different day, so we're going to request that, the city's presentation that this hearing be continued until the next regular meeting, and that the city's presentation be put on at that time. And as you know, pursuant to 9.06.012, the council has 30 days from today to make a decision, so we expect we will continue this and close this hearing at the next meeting. All right, so an appropriate motion would be appreciated.
Mr. Mayor, I make the motion that we move that to the March 4th meeting, I believe, that's our next regular.
Ready to call?
A second.
We have a motion on the floor in a second. There's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Unanimous. So with that, there's no further business. Council is now adjourned at 8:41 PM.